Electric fuel pump failures. I've had 3 in the last 2 years that have left me stranded on the water with this motor right here. And all of that ends today. I'm building a gravity-fed gas tank for this thing. Before I make anything out of aluminum, I like to try to either find a cardboard box or make a template so I can kind of get an eye for how this thing is going to look once I build it. And it looks like this old cardboard box I found around the house is gonna work just fine. Send it. Disclaimer for the haters, trolls, and everyone that considers themselves to be a professional welder because they built 3 houses on that Sims video game. The welding that you're going to see in this video might give you a little tingly sensation in your taint area. I am not a professional welder, and I've never played a professional welder on YouTube, but I am a full-fledged card-carrying member of the I Welded and It Stucked Club. So for all of you internet professional welders, you're probably going to be really disappointed in this video because I can't do the things that you can do. For instance, one thing I know you can do that I can is you can probably weld together a bunch of paper clips into the shape of a gorilla giving some dude a mouth hug, but I can't do that. So you're probably going to see a lot of unclean welding practices in this video. There's probably going to be complete lack of fusion, uneven bead profile, and there's definitely going to be shallow, if any, penetration. You should know all about that, Kevin. Now, while I'm also not a professional welder, I'm also not a professional YouTuber, so this isn't a professional YouTube studio, and you're gonna have to deal with the sound of that fan in the background in this entire video, because it's Georgia in the middle of August, and it's hotter than a whorehouse on nickel night in here. So here's what I came up with. I made this cardboard template. It is 16 inches long, 6 inches wide, and 6 inches tall, and this thing is gonna fit somewhere right about here. Is this the right place for it? I have no idea. I've never done this before, but you know, you never know if something will work until you try it. So I kind of played around with the measurements, and this looks like about the right place. It keeps the tank a little bit away from the exhaust. It also clears the carburetor cable up here, still gives some room for the air filter. I'm just gonna have to make some brackets to attach this, and hopefully it works, but there's only one way to find out. We're gonna have to make it and see. For the actual tank itself, I'm going to be using this old truck toolbox, this aluminum diamond tread. I got this thing for free. Aluminum's kind of expensive. Free is better. So we're going to cut this thing up, and that's what I'm going to use. And here's all the bits and giblets I'm going to need to make this work. All of this was purchased on Amazon. I will leave links down in the description box below so that you can buy this stuff if you decide to do something like what I'm doing. This is a aluminum weld-in cap so that I can fill it up with gasoline. I've got a threaded bung down here on the bottom that you weld in on one side. This is all aluminum as well. It's threaded on this end for one of these little 90-degree adapters, and that is what I will attach my fuel line to. And I needed some way to vent the tank, and I couldn't find a really good vented gas cap that I trusted, so I found these little things. These are gas can vents. What you would do is you drill a hole in your little plastic gas can and run this in, and this kind of seals it up, and then you can use this to vent it while you're running so that you don't run into vapor lock issues. Don't know if this is a permanent solution or not, but I thought I would at least give it a try and see if it will work. Now, to cut up this old toolbox, I'm just using a regular old skill saw, nothing fancy. I believe at one point I was using my Bauer cordless metal cutting skill saw. Still same thing, just a skill saw, super easy to cut. And then this random old dude showed up at the shop and just started walking in front of the camera. Actually, I'm just kidding. That's my buddy Joe, catfishing buddy, and he came by to see what I was doing and walk in front of the camera, which he did great. Now, if I had a bender of any type, it would probably make this project a lot easier because I wouldn't have to do so much welding and so much cutting. I could just cut it out and bend it up, but I don't have a bender, so I'm cutting out each side of this gas tank individually, and I'm gonna weld it up. Not a big deal. It's never a bad thing to get some extra TIG welding practice, especially on material this thin. Now, for material thinness, this is about as thin as it gets. The stuff is micing out at 0.40. That is super thin. Now, all you guys that know how to weld Coke cans together are like, oh, that ain't thin. Whatever. This stuff is thinner than most TIG welding people that are not very experienced need to be welding. But I am going to use it because it is free, and we'll see how this thing turns out. Now, to get everything set up, I am using a piece of angled steel. This is just a regular old piece of like 1.5 by 1.5 angled steel. I'm using some clamps to hold it together, and that's hopefully going to get me as close as I can get to 90 degrees. I mean, it's just a gas tank. I'm not making anything structural. This is just something to hold gas. Not that big of a deal if it's not perfectly angled or perfectly straight. I just want it to look halfway decent. As far as welders, I have a Prime Weld 225X TIG. I really like it. It is about the cheapest you can get into aluminum TIG welding. The thing to watch out for on welding thin aluminum like this is you cannot weld for extended periods of time. This material gets really hot and warps really, really fast. So you just have to be extra careful. And you'll notice in the process of this, I'm taking a lot of breaks and welding a little bit, stop, let it cool off, weld a little bit, stop, let it cool off. That's just kind of how you have to do things when you're welding super thin aluminum like this. Some of the other TIG toys I'm sure I'm going to get asked about that I use. I'm using a CK Worldwide number 9 torch, which is what comes with the Prime Weld welder. I'm also using a CK Worldwide gas lens. I don't have I think I do have a stubby lens, but I may have broke it at some point. So I'm using just a regular length gas lens with a glass Pyrex cup on it. I think on this project I was using a 3/32 tungsten, nothing fancy, just some whatever I found on Amazon, to be honest with you. I'm not super into TIG welding where I have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of toys invested in it. I just use what the welder come with and, the stuff that I need to make halfway decent looking welds. For those of you who are like, let's see them welds, well, here you go. I don't stack dimes. I stack like malted bubble gum. It's not that great, but it sticks. That's all that matters. And next up is time to drill the hole for the gas tank cap, and just use a straight edge, find the center, and drill the hole out to the appropriate size that matches this gas tank cap. After I drilled the hole for the gas tank cap, I had to go back with a grinder and make a nice flat surface so that I could get this thing welded in flat. The problem with this diamond tread is it's got those little, the actual diamond tread part sticks up higher than the rest of the aluminum does. So I had to grind that out flat so that I can, make the gas tank bung sit down on top of it like it's supposed to, and I won't have any gaps in the weld. And then time to weld in the cap bung, and went right back to the TIG welder and just kind of took my time and welded in nice and slow. And there's the welds for those of you that want to see them. Not that great. Go ahead and roast me down in the comment section. Don't care. Next up is time to make the brackets that are going to hold on this gas tank to the motor. I'm using, I believe it's 1.5 inch by like 1-inch C-channel. It's 1/8 inch thick. And I found two little spots on the heads that were already pre-drilled for a bolt, and there's nothing being used there. So I drilled out appropriate size hole to fit that bolt, and I found a stainless steel bolt that I had laying around the shop. I don't remember what size it is right off the top of my head, but it fit in those holes in the head, and that gives me something as an upright support to get these things all leveled out and try to get the gas tank sitting up there nice and pretty. So now I've got the tank all welded up. I'm just trying to put it up here on these brackets and kind of level it out. I found a piece of aluminum right here that I could set on top of the air filter and kind of give me an idea of where it's going to sit at. And then I can go ahead and tack this in place, but it looks like because of the diamond tread, what I probably need to do is mark all of this real quick and then grind all those diamond, the little raised parts down, so that way it sits nice and flush, and then I can tack it in place real quick. I'm going to tack it with my spool gun, and then I'll take it over to the bench and TIG it all in. I don't think these two uprights are going to be enough to support this entire tank, so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to come in here with some 45s and just put some gussets in basically right here, and that'll help kind of hold up the front end of the tank, and then we'll fill it up and see how it feels up there. I may need to find another mounting point, but I'm going to try to get away with just these two for right now. I got those areas kind of ground down a little bit, so hopefully it'll sit nice and flat. And we'll give this a shot and see how it looks. Alright, so I got this thing where I think I want it. It looks decent and doing a lot by eye, a little bit of measuring, but I go ahead and give this thing a quick little tack and then go weld it up. Okay, back to TIGging. Pay attention to these upright brackets while I'm welding this. This gas tank was completely cool just a few minutes ago. I was just holding it with my hands, barehanded. It's how hot thin material gets really, really quickly. You can see the entire bottom of this thing flexing while I'm welding and the brackets moving around. And at the very end, you'll see that I have to actually bend them back into place. This is what makes welding thin aluminum so difficult, is you get hot really, really fast, and it will warp into a freaking pretzel before you even know it. It's not that welding thin stuff is difficult, it's just that you have to really be paying attention to what you're doing, and if you weld too long, you can ruin a project in a heartbeat. For these 45-degree gussets or supports, whatever you want to call them, I just used some 1/8 inch flat bar. I didn't take any exact measurements, I just did what looked right by eye,
and TIG welded them in, made sure they were as straight and even as I possibly could get them. And same thing here. I take a break and kind of let things cool off a little bit because they get really hot when you're welding, and I didn't want to twist this thing up too bad.
All right, we got it mounted up here. It is pretty secure. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. I'm gonna try it and just see. If it needs another mounting point, it's gonna be really difficult because the carb is like right here where I would want that third mounting point. And I don't really want to mount it to the top of the carb or anything, so I'm just gonna go with it like it is and see what happens. Last couple things to do, we need to install the fuel fitting. So I'm thinking, I've been playing around with it a little bit, thinking about putting it like right in here somewhere. And instead of going straight out to a barb fitting, I think I'm gonna run to the hardware store and get one of these that is threaded on the end, screw on a little fuel shut-off switch, one of those little like brass shut-off on and off valves. That way I can turn it off, remove the tank if I ever need to. And then from there, I can run a little short piece around this way, put a fuel filter on there, and then straight into the carb. And the intake for the gas on the carb is over here on this side, so that'll work out perfect. It'll be a nice short little run, and it'll all be downhill, so I won't need to worry about a fuel pump anymore. Fairly simple to remove if I ever need to. Even with 2.5-ish gallons of gas in this thing, it won't really be that heavy.
Before I weld in this little gas bung thing, whatever it's called, I just had to drill an appropriate size hole. I started out with like a 3/16 drill bit, and then I worked my way up with a step down bit until I got to the appropriate size. I actually got it to fit really good, so I was happy with that. And then it was back to the TIG table and burning some fillet rod. That's pretty much all there is to it.
So earlier in the video, we went over all the parts that you're probably going to need, and I forgot a couple of things. One is a fuel filter. I'm going to be using 3/8" line, so all of this stuff that I'm about to talk about is 3/8 size, and that goes to my Mikuni 34mm carburetor. That's what size fuel line it takes. To the bottom port right here on the gas tank, I've got a 90-degree fitting. I've got that going into a shutoff valve so that I can shut the gas off from the tank to the carburetor. And from there, I've got an adapter that goes from an 1/8" threaded male to a 3/8 barb so that I can attach hose. And then I'm going to attach the fuel filter whichever direction it goes, just like this, and then into the carburetor. I'm going to be using a little bit of Teflon tape on each one of these fittings just to make sure they seal up real good. I have already filled this gas tank up full of water and leak tested it just to make sure that everything was good. And I also wanted to run some clean water through it to make sure I got out all of the aluminum shavings and stuff from when I was drilling the holes for the top. So this automotive fuel line is pretty stiff, like it doesn't like to make really tight bends. So what I'm gonna do to make sure that I keep this down and level so that the gas flows, you know, with gravity, is I'm gonna take a zip tie and I'm gonna go around this motor mount right here, just like I did with my throttle cable, and just use that to kind of hold this down a little bit. The last thing to do is throw in some lovely ethanol-free gasoline, and then we'll give her a little test run and see what she do. And then just one final look over to make sure that we have no leaks. And just my luck, we have one very, very tiny little leak. I have one teeny tiny little pinhole right here that is just barely leaking. Now I get to dump all the gas out, clean this thing out with water really good to make sure that it's not gonna go kaboom when I light up on it, and fix this little hole. Always something, always. Well, a few swear words later and a little JB weld, and we're back in business, I hope. I'm just kidding, I TIG welded it a lot. It should never leak again. All right, let's see if she wants to act stupid this time. Dry as a bone. All right, that's what I like to see. Let's see how our fuel flows. Looking pretty good. I can live with that. All right, let's see how she do. Well, I guess we're gonna call this mod good so far. We need to go to the river and take it for a test spin.
So our test run to the river actually went surprisingly well. The gas tank worked just fine. It ran good. I was really happy with it. The gravity feed seemed to work. Now, Ryan was with me filming, and the first thing he noticed was there was gas spewing out the top of the vent the entire time. I don't know if that is some kind of back pressure or if it was just really full and the vibration from the motor was causing this to come out. But this is definitely something that's going to need to be fixed in the future when I redo this gas tank, because I lost a lot of gas while we were riding around. The second thing I noticed, and Ryan also noticed this while he's filming, there is a lot of bubbles. It almost looks like it's coming from the car back up into the fuel filter, as best I can tell. I don't know what causes that. If anybody knows, please let me know down in the comments, or get in touch with me so I can figure that out. It ran fine, so I don't know if it was actually an issue, but I just thought it was kind of odd. So the big letdown of the trip was we did get a crack in the gas tank, and it wasn't any of the welds that cracked. It was the actual material that cracked. It was probably weakened from being hot, and no matter how much I welded this thing, I tried multiple times to re-weld it, and every time I welded it, another crack would form. The next problem was the gas tank vent. After sitting out in the sun for just a couple of days, this thing would not close anymore. It is absolute hot garbage. Don't buy this at all unless you're using it for a gas can and you're going to keep it inside. But just from being out in the Georgia sun for a couple days in the middle of the summer, it's completely useless. It won't even close anymore. The next big letdown was the fuel filter. I ended up taking this tank off a couple of times to weld up some more cracks that I kept finding, and none of them were in the welds, they were just in the material. But the fuel filter eventually gave out when I was trying to take it. Those things are cheap. I'll probably get something a little bit better quality next time. It worked for its purposes, but man, just absolute cheap junk.
Oh, this is incredible. I love it. All right, so what did we learn with this little experiment, children? Well, I learned that gravity is good. Gravity definitely good. Making custom gas tanks out of 5,000-year-old truck toolboxes, not good. Definitely bad. Don't do that. So what will I do? I will more than likely rebuild this out of some new, better aluminum. I don't know if I'll do like 090 or 1/8 inch, but I really like the gravity fed setup. It didn't have any function problems. It worked really good. The issue was the aluminum is so old, every time you put heat to it trying to weld it, the welds never cracked. It was always the aluminum around the welds that cracked. One of the other things that I kind of considered was possibly taking the gas tank that's prefabbed for like a Predator 212 or a Predator 420 or something like that, figuring out how to adapt it to a 670, basically just make some kind of custom adapter that goes up on top of it. The only issue I've ever seen with those type gas tanks is the fuel cap on it. Normally you have to drill a hole in them somewhere to get it to vent properly, and they are kind of small, but for what I do and my style of getting out there on the river, going to a spot and fishing for the rest of the day, I think it would be okay. I could just carry a small gas can with me. The small one might just be the ticket and just carry an extra gas can with me. I don't know. We're gonna go back to a little small 3-gallon tank for now, and then we'll mess around with this some other day. Well, Send It video would not be complete without some time in the haters corner. I've got my haterade. Here we go. If you're not familiar with the haters corner, what we like to do at the end of every video is stand in a corner and see who was the most butthurt in the comments section over the last couple of weeks. And because we know that people on the interwebs are super sensitive, we don't use their real names, we just call them Scooter. Our first Scooter commented on my Lies and Myths About Float Pods video. Scooter writes, "Just looks like a glorified step. Buy a real boat." Well, for your information, Pinocchio, my boat is a real boat. It is real heavy, which is why I had to put float pods on it in the first place. And if you'd have watched the entire video, you would have known that. But because you're a Scooter, you didn't watch the whole video, you just left some dumb comment while you were probably clapping with your fingers spread open. Yay! Our next Scooter commented on my video about stripping old paint off of a John boat. He writes, "Most everything that you've done to your boat, the stripper test, the stenciling stuff, etc., all turned out bad. Had you stood the boat up on its side and performed all test money sign and task money sign with the work surface on a flat horizontal tabletop attitude, do you think each task would have turned out different? Lightweight boat," now he spelled light L-I-T-E, "lightweight boat would have been easy to just slide off and lean on trailer and work your artistic magics." First off, you put an extra R in autistic, and yes, I do have some autistic magic. And it is pretty magical because I leave people in awe of my tism here. But I mean, dang, some people are just mean. Most everything that you've done to your boat turned out bad. I don't know why people gotta be so hateful on the internet. I'd rather hire Stone Cold Steve Austin and slam my hand in a van door than read stupid comments like this. But since you asked, no, Scooter, I could not take this boat off of the trailer and stand it up on its side to do all this work because my boat's kind of heavy. Just like your mom. Our next Scooter commented on also Float Pod video. He wrote, I looked on Amazon for a bag of dicks and I discovered that they do not offer that product. I understand what you did and why you did it. Good job. Can you please drop me a link on where a bag of dicks can be found? Scooter, if you were really looking on Amazon for a bag of dicks, I bet you are a kind of person that eats bananas for their shape and not their flavor. Just saying. The reason you couldn't find the bag of dicks on Amazon is because they don't sell them there. You need to go to this website right here. You'll find them there. Our next Scooter commented on my electrical videos where I sat down and explained to everybody how I did all the wiring. It's pretty decent video. Scooter says, LOL at the shake weight. You mean to tell me that I did an entire 35-minute video on everything you could ever want to know about wiring up a John boat, and all you saw was a shake weight? That's the only thing you could find to comment on. Out of all the explanations that I did in that video, that's the only thing that you remember. I'd be willing to bet that this particular Scooter, if he tried to explain anything to anyone, no matter how simple it is, it would probably come out sounding like Helen Keller trying to eat a ghost pepper. Our next Scooter commented also on the electrical video. He said, I haven't worked on boats much, but I got many years working on automotive and aviation wiring. Do not, for the love of God, use soldering, especially soldering butt connectors. Solder is susceptible to cracking due to vibrations, but those butt connectors are a lower temp solder, so hot days can even soften it. I've seen whole systems come apart from a hot day with those things. The only connection that's been approved by the FAA because of vibrations are those butt crimp connectors, and on those boats he could have used the waterproof version with the glue seal. Great work, but I would replace all those connectors. They're a ticking time bomb. Luckily this isn't much wiring. And before I could even do anything about this Scooter, I didn't even have to say anything. One of our Scooter patrols jumped in and he let Scooter know, I'm an electrical aerospace instructor for Boeing. We use solder thousands of times over one single wiring harness to attach ground wires to shielded cable. Boom! Got him! Thank you for picking up on Scooter before I could. But regardless, thanks for your comment, Scooter. It was about as useful as pedals on a wheelchair. Congratulations. Our next Scooter commented on my boat build video. He said, you're really obsessed with talking about how tough you think you are. Boat looks good, but the constant BS trying to make yourself look better is petty and embarrassing. Real men don't talk about the hard parts, they just do it. Speaking of hard parts, what's the difference between 3 dicks and a joke? This Scooter can't take a joke. You know, I understand there's always going to be haters on the internet no matter what you try to do, no matter how much you try to help people. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to have a good time, show you guys what I do on my John boats. And if you like it, great. If you don't, you're more than welcome to go deep throat a chainsaw. Don't care. But I like to provide some comic relief, especially when I talk about doing stuff the hard way. You know, that's kind of part of being a man. Do stuff the hard way. Why fix something when you just chunk a wrench across the garage and scream at it? And our honorable mention for the video, Scooter writes, gotta be a Marine. From the crayon references to the range references and send it. Love it. Keep pushing, bro. Comments compound sand. Thank you for the comment, Scooter. Actually, I am not a Marine as much as I would have loved to have been. I signed up when I was 18 years old, went through everything, got through medical, and apparently I popped positive for awesome, so they wouldn't let me in. Also, I prefer sniffing Sharpies over eating crayons, so they told me I had to go work for another government agency after I turned 21. And the government agency I went to work for many years wasn't exactly like the Marines, but I did get to drive fast. Stop signs were optional after midnight, and I had to play with blue lights, so that was a lot of fun. But I do have a bunch of friends that are Marines, retired Marines, and I love giving them a hard time every chance that I get. But I do love my Marine buddies, all of them, even though they're a little special. Everybody in the armed services is super thankful for what y'all do and for serving our country. But Marines especially are so much fun to tell jokes about. I was hanging out with a couple of Marine buddies not too long ago, and I was like, hey man, you guys want to hear a Marine joke? And he was like, dude, I'm like 6'2", weigh 250. I could crack your skull in half in 2 seconds. This guy over here is ex-Marine. He's like 6'9", 290 something pounds, and he would squish you in a heartbeat. And they're like, you sure you still want to tell a Marine joke with us two sitting here? And I was like, nah, I don't want to have to explain it twice.